Happy New Year and welcome back to Garage and Gadgets. It's a cold Saturday, so I figured it's good to work in the garage, try to get some progress on some of these projects. Today's project is going to be continuing the train. We need to finish up this train truck, and what I'm hoping to do today is get the axle all assembled and in the truck, as well as getting the electric motor in place and chain drive set up. That will more or less finish the truck with the exception of how it actually attaches to the train, which I'm making some modifications to the design, so we'll see how that all comes out in future videos. But today, we need to start with the axles. This is going to be kind of some math and figuring out where we want to put the wheels so that we get our gauge correct. And then we have to repeat that for both the front and rear axle of the front and rear truck. So, with that, we need to introduce ourselves to what we're going to be using for the wheels. For this, I've decided to use a drum to a 99 Cavalier. This is because it has a nice flange and kind of a tapered flat, the drum. And this will mimic a train wheel, I think, pretty well. The only thing is we have a 1-inch axle, and we need to make an adapter to attach this to that. So let's print that out. Now watch, if you have issues with fast motion or that, you might want to skip ahead. But let's see this thing get printed out. All right, here it is. It did not come out exactly how I wanted it, but you can't redesign without first a failure of design. So let's see how this goes. The issue that I'm having with it is this. On the back, we got a really nice print. We got nice strong bracing for the center hub. But on this side here, the face didn't come out as nice as I had wanted to. I probably needed to put a nice skin on this. I'm afraid of some of these gaps being too thick and causing it to break off. But seeing how this is the side that the brake drum bolts onto, if we do this plus some washers on the back side, it may strengthen this enough that it won't break, but time will tell. All right, let's put this together. So we'll first start with the hub adapters. Like I said, not the happiest with how these printed, but I think they should be okay. If not, we'll redesign them. How they work is the center hub goes in the hole and lines up with where the lug bolts would be. In place of lug bolts, we got these 1/2-inch bolts, and that should work just fine for applying the not so much torque that this thing's going to produce. So I'm going to pin a couple of these in, and then we will tighten them down. The idea is to have the washer kind of spread out the load so that we're not clamping down on such a small area. Make it less likely to break. These ridges, because this is after all just plastic, these ridges are to stop this from flexing and wobbling. It should sturdy up the part significantly. And there you have it. We got one bolted together. I'm going to zip through these other ones and bring you back. All right, now that we got that figured out and the wheels are bolted to the hub adapters and those are ready to get installed onto the axle, we need to attach the gear that's going to drive the axle. And to do that, we need to make another adapter. This adapter is going to have the gear bolted to it, and then it's going to get pinned to the axle so everything spins as one. So let's watch that get printed. And again, if fast motion bothers you, skip ahead. All right, here it is. Fairly simple part. You got 4 holes for the gear to attach to, and then 1 hole for the pin that will pin it to the axle. So now that we got these, we can start subassembling all of that. Okay, with that, let's move on to other parts of the drivetrain. Now, this electric motor doesn't produce a whole lot of power, but it produces a lot of speed. So we're going to gear this down significantly. It should still give us enough speed that it's kind of fun, but definitely give us more power and more torque to actually move itself. Whether it's going to be enough, I don't know. We're also using the skinnier of the 2 chains. No real reason as to why I chose this side versus the other size. But let's put this onto this and get it ready to be installed. It's going to involve pushing these 4 screws through the assembly and tightening it down. Oh, got the washer on the wrong side on that one. Okay, let me go get a wrench to tighten this down and a Phillips. Okay, we're gonna have to get creative on this one, seeing how I don't own a wrench for these. They're bigger than 5/16 and smaller than 10 millimeter, but 8 millimeters too small, so 9 millimeter. I don't know. All I do know is I have a pair of pliers. So let's zip these on. All right, there you go. Now that we got that, we might as well finish up the sub-assemblies and do the electric motor. The next 2 parts that we're going to print out are going to be the motor mount. So this is going to be a mount that's going to attach to the frame, and then a way of affixing the electric motor to it. So it's going to be 2 parts. It's going to be kind of weird looking, but it'll make sense once we install it onto the truck. Anyways, let's get to the print, and again, if fast motion bothers you, skip ahead. All right, and here are the parts. This part here is going to attach to 2 of the 3 all threads that connect the left and right side, and this is going to have the electric motor attached to it, and then it is going to attach to this piece here. This is going to enable us to, if we need to adjust the motor as to line up all the gears without having to print out one giant part, we can just change out this one part here. For that, we're going to need these 2 pieces and, if I have one, a zip tie. Okay, first, let's attach this. No, you know what? Let's attach this to this. So this is going to go in here, and then this is going to go on like that. So let's bolt this together. Go get a socket to drive that. All right. Good thing is these holes are tight. Problem is that makes it hard to install all this. So same for that. All right, that is now attached. So now this bolts onto here with these 2 screws. Oh, hardware is expensive. We need to not be throwing it on the floor. Now this, I'm going to tighten down with a screwdriver. Now, how this design works is there's this little standoff right here. And that's going to do 2 things. One, this is not very strong, so it's going to help keep this from flexing by running a zip tie. And I have the most overkill zip tie to do this because I could not find my smaller zip ties. But I'll take this and we will zip tie these 2 together. And now we're going to use the body of the electric motor as part of the mount to keep all of this from flexing and being nice and rigid. All right, let's clip off this excess. And that subassembly is completed. Now, this will go on, but not until we have squared away everything else, which is where we're at now. So let's give ourselves a little bit of room to work. Okay, now let's start mocking this up and figuring it out. So this is your typical garage engineering where you have an idea in your head and you kind of let it design it, where real engineers will figure all this stuff out long before they actually make parts. We're not that kind of engineer. So this is basically what it's going to look like. Now, what we want is, this is the functional part of the wheel and this is the flange to keep it on the tracks. We want the functional part of the wheels to be 15 inches apart, and we want that standard across all of our axles, and hopefully that will work. Hopefully this is enough of a flange to keep it from rolling off. Hopefully the camber will help it stay centered, but we're going to want 15 inches from the base of the radius to the base of the radius. So that's going to put this wheel about here. So I'm thinking the best way to go about doing this is to work from one side and figure out where the other side is going to fall. Since this is the side that we put the lock nuts on, we will consider this our datum, and then everything else is going to be based off of what we do here. Now, we need to figure out the length of the axle because the raw stock I got is way too long. So let's get or at least one of these axle hubs out so we can start using it to take measurements, and we can kind of figure out where we're going to fall in there. So let's do that next. Okay, now that we got one of these off so we can start taking measurements. This here, including the thickness of the nuts, is 2.5 inches. Now, if you look at the front face of this, if these two surfaces were right up against each other, you would have collision between these nuts and these bolt heads. So we need to space these out a little bit. So we know that this is sticking out 1/2 inch. This is sticking out, we'll just say 1/2 inch. It's actually slightly less. So that's 1 inch, and let's give ourselves 1/2 inch of clearance. That is 1.5 inches. So from this here, which is 2.5, that's 3.5, 4 inches. So let's do 3.5 inches, and that should put some space between this face and this face. So now with that, we now know how far this needs to be from here. Let's get a marker so we can mark that. Okay, so if we keep this flush onto here, we know from the end of this to this surface here, we want it to be 3.5 inches. So that will go from here to here. Then we have 1/2 inch, and then another inch, and that should give us all the clearance that we need. All right, so let's mark. Come on, work with me here. That's not working with me. Three and a half inches. All right. So that 3.5 inches will be where this face lands. Now, I could probably look at the math model, but where's the fun in that? Oh, wait, that's why I kept this. So now we need to know where to drill the hole to pin this to that axle. That hole is not going to be measured by this. Let me go get a better measuring device. Hopefully these will measure appropriately. Okay, so we need to know how far that hole is from this edge. And I kind of nailed it from the beginning. So it's about 8 millimeters, which we can switch over to hopefully inches. 5/16. Okay. So with that, we can look at this and go over 5/16. Right there is where we need to put the hole for, oh, there it is, for that pin to go through the axle to attach this where we want it so that it will clear this here. That's not the important one. The important one is the one that's over here, because we need to have that keep right about here 15 inches away. So that's going to be the fun part. Okay, after thinking about this, from this face to this face of this wheel, you want 13 inches, because then you got an inch here and an inch there, which gives you your 15 inches. So hopefully maths, and we do this correctly. But if we do it incorrectly, but the same 4 times, it should still give us the same result as doing it correctly 4 times, as long as we do it incorrectly the same way. Okay. So let's drill that hole, and hopefully when we pin this to that and slide this on, it gives us the clearance we want while being installed appropriately onto this. Let's get to that. Okay, welcome to how I'm going to injure myself today. We have a drill press that I picked up at a flea market, and I double-checked the math and got us a dot where we want to drill, lined up the dot with this. Could not find any hardware to actually attach the vise to the drill press, so vise grips, because you make do with what you have. In any case, with this being a mild steel, I don't want to overheat the drill bit. I don't have cutting fluid, but WD-40 works just as well. So let's give it a quick spray down, and let's see how this goes. All right, there we go. We have our hole. So this should be the bearing, a little bit of space, and then our wheel. All right, let's get it out of the vise and start seeing how all of this is lining up. There'll probably be a burr on this. I didn't mean to bump you, sorry about that. All right, let me set this here and get something to clean that up. We now have our hole that is going to pin that to this. So let's now get one of those to slide down onto here, and that will kind of start setting all of this up. So that is going to require us to take this apart so that we can slide it on, pin it, and then bolt it back together. I will bring you back when all of that is completed. Okay, that was a battle, but we have it fully assembled on the one side of the axle. Now we just need to do that 3 more times. More importantly, exactly the same on this side. So, the drum is bolted to the adapter, which is pinned to the axle. The bearing is set on top of that. So now we have our measurements. We just need to find out how far from here we need to go, and then drill the hole, slide everything on, cut the axle to length, bolt it all together, and then that is our template for the other side. So if we take our tape measure and we put it on, and let me grab my demonstration piece. So we have this, it's bolted onto the axle like that. Going from this surface here, if I measure from that surface to the back of this drum, that will tell me how far I need to put this. So if I can find out what this offset is, I can add the 13 inches onto it so that I will know where to put this on the axle to have my 15 inches from this surface to its mating surface here. So if I use my file as a straight edge, that is 5/16, an inch and 5/16. So if we look at where an inch and 5/16 is, that's pretty much where we want it to ride anyways. That actually works out quite well. That's about there, which is right where we want the rail to be. So if we do 15 inches from that there, if we have 15 inches from this surface to the back of that surface, that gives us our gauge. And not only is that really easy to measure, it's almost like I designed it that way, which I will admit I absolutely did not. Okay, so here's my marker. And let's mark 15 inches. So there is 15 inches from the back. That will line up where this surface is on here. So now we just need to measure how far this hole is from here. And then we can measure our 3 7/8 from that. And we'll know where to cut this. And then we can assemble the other side. So let's measure where this hole is. Where did my calipers go? Okay. So turn on and zero these. That is 31.5 millimeters, which we switch over into inches. That's 1 1/4 inches. So we'll burn an inch just to make sure that we are where we want to be. So 1 1/4 would put us right there. So that is where we need to drill a hole. So the back of this lines up with this line here. And then we know that, well, we don't know. Let's measure. Let's just measure to make sure all is well. Yeah, 5/16. So 5/16 from the hole to this front surface, and then from that front surface to the end is 3 1/2. All right, so 3 1/2. So let's do our 5/16. There's our 5/16. And from that, we want 3 1/2 inches. So we cut it here. We drill this hole, which should put this face at this mark, which is 3 1/2 inches from the end of the pipe, or axle, which would put our bearing where we want it, our wheel where we want it, so that we have the gap, this gap here, and this 15 inches apart. Whether that is how this will turn out, I have no idea. But it's all going to start with drilling that hole and getting this to slide all the way down here. What I'll probably do is drill that hole, cut the bar so I only have to press this down, you know, a couple inches versus down this entire length of pipe. Okay, let's get this chucked up and drilled. All right, now that we got this rigged up, I really want to stress, this is not how you use any of these tools. I'm using a brake drum to counterbalance this brake drum. I got vices clamped to the table with vice grips. Don't use any of this equipment in this manner. I hope you enjoy this. All right, now, let's just one last quick check. That's where we want it. It is in the center. I bumped up the speed of the drill press. Let's give all this a nice little bath of oil. And let me see if I can get this so you can see it and I can drill. So we will double check this hole. We'll do the 5/16, 3 1/2 inches, make sure that that's where we want it. And then we will cut that, face it so that things can go on there. Press on that other hub, bolt on, put the other bearing on, and we will have one axle done. But before we do all that, because that's going to be a real pain to undo, we need to figure out where we're going to put this, because this will also need a hole drilled. So let me take a moment and figure out where this needs to be on this axle, because that will have to be pressed on before this does. Okay, welcome back to the make this up as we go along. So let's take a quick look at this. Let's set this back into here. So, from the back of this drum to the face of this is 8 inches. Then from the face of this to that hole is 5/8. So I need to drill a hole at that spot, which is from this face, 8 inches and 5/8. Drill that hole. We can slide this on, pin it, then we can slide this on, pin it. We can put the drum on, and then the bearing at the end of this here. So let's chuck this back up, drill that hole, and then we can move on to pressing everything in. Let me get this set up and I'll bring you right back. Okay, so I've double checked my point. I'm centered. The jankiness is strong with this hole. All right, let's press this one in. So let's take this back over there and we can start hammering all this stuff on. I still have my mark a little bit from where I need to cut this. So let's move over there. We'll cut the excess off, start pressing this stuff together. Well, here we go. We have our first axle. Bearings are installed, drive gears installed, and so are the wheels. Now let's install this onto the frame. I've loosened this side up so that this can go where it needs to. Let's get this side installed first. That should set the distance. Let's see, I have something other than my fist. All right, that's seated. Now let's take this. Oh. There we go. All right. There you go. First axle is installed. Now, we just need to do this again over there, and we'll do that tomorrow because this took a lot longer than I expected it to. We'll rewind and do it again tomorrow, finish this truck up. Good morning and welcome back. It's the next day. Had a snowstorm and some ice come overnight, so been doing some cleaning outside. But now it's time to get onto this train. So yesterday we made one of the 2 axles needed for this train truck. A lot of measurements scribbled down, but now it's the time to do that on the other side. Since we already have the measurements, we should be able to drill all 3 of those holes that are needed at once and then press everything together and then final assembly. So let's get started with that over at the drill press. Okay, here we are at the drill press. Got a measuring tape out, the other part of bar stock that we're going to use for the other axle. And let's mark out some dots where we're going to end up drilling the 3 holes and then where we're going to end up cutting it off. Okay, so the first hole, and we're going to measure everything off of this right-hand side and work our way this way. So starting at the right-hand side, I need a hole at just shy of 4 inches, at 3 inches and 14/16. You can tell none of this stuff was actually measured out when designed. So 3 inches. All right. So we got that one marked. The next one is at 14 inches and 13/16. So right there. And the last one is 21 inches on the dot. So that would be there. And then we cut it off at 25. So we'll cut it off there. All right. So we have 1 hole, 2 holes, 3 holes that we need to drill. I'm going to go take this and line this up with the one that we made yesterday, just as a double check. I double checked the holes. They all line up with where the other axle is, so everything else should line up pretty good. Got it in the vise, chalked up, ready to go for this first hole. Got my can of WD-40 ready. And, well, let's double check that this is still tight in here. Then we can get started on this. I really need to find a better key. All right. And there you have it. We got our 3 holes for our pins. I'm going to clean this up. I will file off any burrs that there may be on the sides of the holes where drill bit entered and exited. I'm going to make my cut here so it's to length, and then I'll bring it back. We can start mocking things up. Okay, so we got all of our parts kind of laid out here. The first part we're going to install is pressing this down here. From what I had yesterday, that's quite the adventure. But we'll press this down, and then we'll press these onto the ends, and then we'll lock these down onto the very ends after we bolt the drums to the adapters. We'll install it, and then we'll set our widths on that. We will also install the electric motor. So let me pound this onto here, get it where it needs to be, and then I'll come back once I got everything pressed into place. Well, welcome back. Now, you're probably thinking 2 things. 1, what do you mean welcome back? I was already here. And 2, weren't you wearing a dark colored shirt before? Well, yes and yes. It is a week later. There was an unfortunate accident, which I will try to recreate now. Basically what happened was while I was pressing the parts together, I bumped what we had already built and it fell off the table and a part of it broke, and I had to reprint that part that broke. So I'm going to real quick fix the part that broke and get us back on track. So let's get started on that. All right, with the old part taken off, I got the new part. Now the new part I printed on my old 3D printer, and I like how it came out a lot better. But that might be because I have had more time to play around with the settings on it. Regardless, let's get this installed. There's a hole here in the axle and in the hub. We're going to have to keep in line. Let's see. All right, there you go. That is installed. We're ready to bolt the drums on, put the bearings on, and then put it into the truck. All right, here's our other axle. Now I'm going to take this and set it aside, remove that axle and repair it, and then we'll come back. Before we put these axles in, we have one thing we need to modify on the train truck itself. We have to add in the powertrain, the actual motor and motor mount. So let's do that next. In the meantime, will set this over here. Okay, if you remember correctly, when we put all this together a long time ago, we left these not with lock nuts, but with regular nuts, and this is why. We're going to take all of this off so that we can slide this on it. So let's work on doing that right now. Now this piece here survived the accident, but the sister piece on the other side, this broke off because when it fell, it landed here and broke this piece off. Now, I have looked into this, and I think I'm going to reprint all of these pieces that will fit a little bit tighter in here. I think the system will work a lot better if we didn't have all this slop that we were constantly fighting. So that will happen later. Now, I only need to remove one of these two because it's going to attach like this. So let's do that now. So this is going to slide onto these like this. And we're going to keep it in position with a set of lock nuts. I'm going to thread these on, but I'm going to thread them pretty far in because they're going to be on this side of the mount. Okay, now that those are threaded in, we can slide this into place. All right, and then we can thread on another set of nuts to lock that into place. And this we can use with these, 8 nuts, lock this into place so that we can get our chain alignment correct. And it'll stop it from wanting to walk around. All right, we'll leave that there for now. We will put this nut back on, this gear back in, because that's going to hold the chain up over these rails, similar to how that one is. We will put in these 2 jam nuts. This is going to be the stop for the brakes. Put a washer on. Now we can put the brakes back on. And this point, I need more. All right. Ooh. Those will get there. I need another nut for that. And this is going to get one of these special ones. All right, so this is pretty much loose installed. We can now put this back on. Now that this is the final time we're going to be installing this, I have lock nuts for this outside, which we will just thread up to the nylon. There it goes. Once you've taken these in and out a couple times, they go in a lot easier. Okay, now as you can see, our gears don't line up, which means this is going to have to go this way. But first, let's finish this up and put in the other side. Now you can also see on this one, oh, maybe you can't. There. Now you can see on this one how it's tilted, so I'm going to have to straighten that bearing out. But that's just tapping it until it's square. All right. This, this needs to come out. There we go. Or this needs to come in. There it goes. What had happened is we never set the width on any of this, so it was shifted too far over. I had to push all this stuff in so I could slide it to line up. There you go. Now we just need to make sure all this stuff is square and tighten it down. All right, it is unfortunate about this piece, but now we need to get all of this aligned, which is going to involve moving this back a few more inches. All right. Let me see if I can find the master link for this. Okay. Looks like this gear will have to go that way. Now for the chain. Like I said, this is a very small chain, but I think it should do just fine. Here's to hoping our measurements were good. Good. We landed at a good spot on the chain. So what I'm doing here is we got two nuts right here and a gear. Now you get this gear in the same plane as this one by moving that out. Now we got plenty of play on the shaft of the motor, so it's just a matter of getting this where I want it. Let's see if we can get a little bit more chain over here. Help us mark where all of this needs to be. We have the link where we need to break the chain figured out. So let me go get a chain break this out. With that cut, let's put together and get a master link on it. Stay. There we go. Master link in. So, there we have it. Electric motor goes over the gear, goes underneath, over here, across these two oilers, back. I will start making upgraded and repaired parts for this, but we have our first train truck. Now we just need to build another one, and we have to finish designing the big pivot bearing for how it attaches. But with that completed, I'll see you next time.